doctor, the cancer researcher, who went to San Juan, Puerto Rico to study anemia in the 1930s. Tell us what he did there and how he ascended from there.
That's right. So Cornelius Rhodes was working for the Rockefeller Institute, and he went to San Juan in the 1930s to research anemia. A lot of Puerto Ricans were suffering from anemia as a result of hookworm. And he took his, he'd been trained in Harvard, but suddenly when he got to San Juan, he became a different kind of doctor. He took his location, being in Puerto Rico, as sort of licensed to do whatever he wanted, however he wanted it. So this is what we have accounts of. First of all, he refused to treat some of his patients just to see what would happen. He tried to induce disease in others, again, to see what would happen by restricting their diets. He referred to his patients, to his colleagues, as experimental animals. And then he wrote a letter. He sat down and he wrote a letter in which he said to a colleague in Boston, he said, Puerto Rico is beautiful. The weather is incredible. I love the islands. However, the problem is with the Puerto Ricans. They're awful, they steal, they're filthy, and the thing to do really is to totally exterminate the population. And then he said, and I've started that. I've killed 8 of my patients, and I've sought to transplant cancer into 13 more. Hope you're doing well in Boston, yours sincerely, and just signed off. We know that because he then left the letter out. It was discovered. It was discovered by the Puerto Rican staff of the hospital where he was working, and it became a national scandal, understandably. Puerto Ricans had heard the scorn of mainlanders. They'd heard talk of the problem of Puerto Rican overpopulation and how mainlanders disapproved of it. But here they saw what they interpreted to be the racist homicidal intent from a doctor who'd actually killed 8 people. Cornelius Rhodes left. He just fled the islands, hoping, presumably, that what happens in San Juan stays in San Juan. The government did an investigation. It uncovered another letter, which the governor deemed worse than the first. But the governor, who was appointed governor, he's a mainlander who's been appointed and not elected, suppressed that letter. We don't have it. No researcher has ever seen it or found it, and concluded, after having suppressed evidence, that Cornelius Rhodes probably didn't kill 8 of his patients. He was probably just joking or something like that. And Cornelius Rhodes never faced a hearing. Not only that, he didn't even get fired. So he returned to New York. He continued his job. He quickly became the vice president of the New York Academy of Medicine. And then during World War II, he became a colonel in the Army and became the chief medical officer in the Chemical Warfare Service. So that's not only a promotion. Just think about what that allows him to do, because the Chemical Warfare Service is preparing the United States to enter a gas war if it comes to that. So in order to do that, it tests out all kinds of poison gas, first on animals, goats are preferred, but ultimately on human subjects, on uniformed men who are, without a lot of informed consent, either having mustard agents applied to their skin to see how their skin blisters, are put in gas chambers with gas masks to see how long they can stay in there. They're locked in there until they falter. Or in a lot of cases, there's an island that the United States uses off of Panama, San Jose Island, and men are put in the field and they're asked to sort of stage mock battles. But while they do that, they're gassed from overhead, and then this is to see how they're affected.
And interestingly, Professor Immerwahr, there were many Puerto Ricans who served in World War II who ended up stationed in Panama and being subjected to some of the mustard gas experiments that were conducted at that time. I know because one of my uncles who served in the 65th Infantry was in Panama and was subjected to those experiments. So it's the interesting thing, though, is that Cornelius Rhodes remained a major figure, didn't he, in the medical world, and way up into only recently, only in recent years has there been an attempt to sort of revise or reform the image of him in the medical community.
That's exactly right. So after overseeing these medical experiments with gas in which 60,000 uniformed men, a lot of them Puerto Rican, were subjected without informed consent to chemical weapons. And Many of them suffered debilitating effects as a result of this. Emphysema, eye damage, genital scarring, psychological damage. Some of these men were really harmed by this. Nevertheless, that also didn't impede him. And in fact, some of that work with chemical agents alerted him, as well as some other doctors, to the possibility that mustard agents could be used to treat cancer. Cornelius Rhodes took some of the surplus stock of U.S. Chemical weapons after the war and became the first director of the Sloan Kettering Institute, and then used his position to sort of launch the turn to chemotherapy and tried chemical after chemical after chemical out on fighting cancer. The incredible thing is that within the U.S. medical community, that's what he was remembered for. He appeared on the cover of Time magazine. There was an award given by the American Association of Cancer Research after Cornelius Rhodes, and that award was given for more than 20 years before a Puerto Rican cancer researcher pointed out to the AACR, you know the guy after whom this award is named, the hero Cornelius Rhodes, you know what he did in Puerto Rico? And it had been 23 years. The informational segregation had been so extraordinary that it had been 23 years before the mainland medical community realized that the guy that they'd been enthusiastically celebrating had at least said in a letter that he'd killed 8 of his patients. The medical community has now gotten the memo, and there's been the award has been changed, and now there's an understanding of his dual legacy. But what's extraordinary to me is just how long he got away with it, just how long he was able, and how many Puerto Ricans he was able to experiment on in some of the worst ways imaginable without facing the consequences of that.
So as